Add excitement to your holidays with Ohio Lottery Holiday Scratch-Offs, including $1 holiday cash and $5 holiday lucky times 10, or Holiday Bonus Millions with a 200 times multiplier and a $2 million top prize. Plus, enjoy second chance drawings where you can win 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times the price of your ticket. Scratch-offs make the perfect gift, and best of all, there's no wrapping required. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
Have you ever known someone who eats super healthy, lives a healthy lifestyle, and still gets sick? Maybe that's you. It feels like the universe is playing a cruel joke, right? Why does Joe Belly over there, who eats fast food every day, seem fine, while you or someone you care about is struggling with health issues? We know that the mind influences our health. The placebo effect shows how our beliefs can actually affect physical outcomes in the body. But have you ever wondered if your body just listens to what you think? Like really listens and responds? Picture this. You're tense, you're worried about a deadline or a difficult conversation, and suddenly your back hurts or your stomach is in knots, or that old knee injury flares up. Is it just a coincidence? Or is your emotional state talking directly to your body? Think about how a smell can suddenly bring back a forgotten memory. That's your brain linking sensory information to emotional states. Now, what if your emotional memory could link pain to distress or healing to happiness? I'm reminded of my dad. He seemed so healthy. He was devoted to his higher power. He didn't seem like he carried much stress. He was physically built. My cousins actually called him Buff Bob. He got outside, he moved his body. His diet, he couldn't really afford to eat well. And frankly, we didn't have that kind of education back in the 90s, or at least it wasn't prevalent. But for years, I wondered, why him? But as I learned more about how our past, especially traumas, affect us now, it started to make sense. He had a very traumatic childhood, and a lot of his siblings have struggled with serious health issues from schizophrenia to alopecia to COPD. And this brings us to a big question. Are we stuck with the effects of a stressful past? How much do our minds shape our health? And how can we change our thinking to live healthier lives? Well, that's what we're going to learn about today. And it's not just about thinking yourself better. It's deeper than that. It's about uncovering those hidden automatic patterns formed from past emotions and memories that influence how our body behaves and reacts today. What if we could use this understanding to boost everything else that you're doing for your health? We're adding a new piece to the healing puzzle, the emotional part. So 3 powerful things we will learn today are how different personalities within the same body can exhibit contrasting health symptoms. Yep, I'm talking multiple personalities having different health issues per personality. The science of emotion-controlled consciousness and how our feelings shape our health, and how to trigger deep, transformative mental states to enhance healing and emotional freedom. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up, or text the word morning to 33777.
There are also people who have PTSD, severe trauma, who aren't sick. And there are other people who are retired and maybe don't live that stressful of a life, who are. What's the difference? And what I started to realize was that it's the combination of emotions that's the key. And so the simple way to think about that is if somebody wants to make cake and you have flour, you can't make cake. But if you have flour and you mix it with eggs and butter or vegan eggs and butter or whatnot, you have cake. And if you have different ingredients, you have a completely different recipe. And so that's been the key. And so even fast forward to today, I mean, not only was I able to heal myself with that, but I've been able to show healing results under medical equipment, and just actually had studies published, some case studies published in a medical journal last year.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So your story is fascinating. You actually spent 5 years in a wheelchair. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and actually closer to 6, but I was an absolute mess. Basically, I have to say, this is literally the last thing I ever thought I would be doing, showing people how to heal themselves with their mind. I used to do network engineering and operations, and I had an accident, technically 2 accidents, a car accident and a fall. And I fell just wrong, just right, however you want to say it. But I literally went from living a full life to being wheelchair, walker, cane, and in extreme pain. And my doctors saying there was nothing else they could do for me. And it made me start looking outside of the box and saying, what do I do? And life changing.
You mentioned how you thought you'd be the last one kind of talking about healing with your mind. Can you explain that initial skepticism that you faced about mind-body healing and how the journey helped you overcome it?
Absolutely. You know, I number one, if somebody had asked me during my injury or told me that I could heal with my mind, I probably would have taken offense to it. I would have thought, what, they think it's all in my head, or that they don't understand that I had a physical accident, a physical injury. I had to hang up thinking, how is it possible for the physical body to heal, like the mind to heal the physical body? I have a physical injury. It's not just mind over matter. And yet the more I started researching, that was a huge thing. Like, the awareness that, number one, the body is constantly repairing and replacing cells. We have a whole new skeleton approximately every 10 years. And so I thought, well, wait a second. How is it possible for somebody to have that old football injury from high school? And that was one thing. But another thing was even the awareness that people with multiple personality disorder could have different illnesses and different personalities. I was like, wait a second. They could have asthma, allergies, high blood pressure in one, healthy in another. And I thought, wait a second. How is this even possible? So it was just all of the things, the placebo, nocebo, all of the things that continue to shine the awareness that the mind somehow held the ability to heal the body, that it woke me up. But prior to that, I would have thought it's impossible.
What I found is so many people live in like one dimension or the other. They're either conditioned by the beliefs that most of us were, where it's just medicine, what's right in front of you, what you can see. And there's this diehard skepticism to where it makes it difficult to even penetrate with another way. I'm thinking about like 70% of my family members. I can't even talk about most of my beliefs because it's just like their eyes glaze over and they think I'm a whack job. So I'm curious, how are you introduced to this? What opened your mind? I mean, I know all of these stories opened your mind, but where were you to actually even be able to learn about them in your life?
I mean, I would say a few things. I would say, I was desperate. Number one, I was desperate. I didn't care where the answer came from. I just wanted the answer. I would say that was one piece. So at the same, like was getting nerve ablations. I was getting infusions. I was, on the medications. I was anything anywhere the answer came from. I think I didn't care. And so I think that getting to that place of not caring was really important. Also, something that was fascinating, even now, I love to show people who don't even believe it's possible how to heal, because a lot of people think that it does require belief. And that's something that's been fun, especially because going through my injury, the way I was, I started looking at the mind and metaphysics and quantum physics and neuroscience. And that was something that really helped me, was that even though I was very skeptical, I kept seeing proof of the power of the mind, the placebo, for example. And with the placebo, which is, a fake treatment, where in any research study, a certain percentage of the participants will get the real treatment, a certain percentage will get the fake treatment. I thought initially it was all about belief. So I was like forcing myself to believe I was already healed and visualizing and the mantras and gratitude for my healing and doing all of the things, but it wasn't working. And then I found something called the open label placebo, which is exactly like it sounds. It is open label. So both the doctor and the patient both know it's a fake pill or a fake treatment, and it still works, even though they know. And I thought, well, wait a second. Clearly, it's not just belief. And I would say that just putting the pieces together and it making sense. And I would say that was a piece also, just the research, neuroscience, understanding, and metaphysics, just all of it.
So how do you understand that open label placebo to work? Is it the repetitive action of saying, I'm swallowing bullshit right now?
Do not try this at home. I'm swallowing bullshit right now. Oh my God, I love you. Yes, that is the new healing affirmation. I think you and I just came up with a cure for everything right now. I'm swallowing bullshit. It's fun. You're so much fun. So no, it wasn't actually, mantras didn't work for me. And I tried the affirmations, the meditations, all of the things. And what I would say is this, is that when we start to look at the placebo, a lot of what affects the placebo, like, if there's a caring doctor-patient relationship, the results are much higher. And so there's so many emotional factors that actually go into the placebo. And then when you stop and think about it, the belief that something could work, a belief in a good outcome, makes a person feel how? Optimistic. Well, optimism itself has actually been shown to speed up healing. So even somebody who goes through surgery, if they're feeling optimistic, it can help speed up their results. After surgery, even if somebody's feeling stressed or fearful or angry or anxious, they can have slower healing and a higher chance of rehospitalization. So I would say, really, ultimately, what it comes down to, if we look at it in a grounded way, we can look at emotions, and we can see that emotions shift our biochemistry. But if we also look at the awareness that our energy is connected to emotions, that's a whole nother piece. And I know a lot of people think energy is just woo-woo, but it's actually been scientifically discovered. And don't get me wrong, I love the woo-woo, but it's actually scientifically discovered. In fact, the medical scientist who discovered energy of the body was nominated for the Nobel Prize 11 times and actually even won the Nobel Prize in Russia. And so we could call it emotions, we could call it mindset, we could call it energy. They're all factors. Does that make sense?
It does. I read a book called The Expectation Effect, and I loved some of it. It was all around like the placebo and the nocebo. I had a hard time because I felt like I could feel the author's biases, which was just funny given that the whole thing is around expectation. And so maybe I had the expectation, maybe he did. I'm not sure, but it was clashing a little bit. And he just felt very indoctrinated into Western medical things. So many of his ideas were around how to use your mind to make your meds work better. And I'm like, but why not use the same thing to possibly do something with less side effects? Maybe work in conjunction. I don't know. Anyways, so read it with your awareness up. He talked about that same thing with the doctors and basically feeling like if you feel like you're in hands that care for you, your outcome's going to be different. Even a doctor that just explains, again, he was very Western medical driven, explains how the medication is working, it's more likely to work. And so I feel like I love conversations like this where you're explaining what's going on in our mind and our energy and how that can lead us towards healing, because that can empower us to improve our odds.
You know what's funny? We spend so much time feeding our minds, reading books, listening to podcasts, learning new things, but then we grab whatever's convenient to feed our bodies. And I get it. Life is busy, and sometimes a drive-through feels like the only option. But that's why I take Field of Greens. It's a greens powder made with whole organic fruits and vegetables. No extracts, no lab-made stuff, and just 1 scoop a day gives you simple, real nutrition. Field of Greens feeds your body with fruits and vegetables medically chosen to support your heart, vital organs, and immune system. And let me tell you something. Since I started taking it, I've noticed these little changes that show me how nutrient depleted I must have been before. Like the ridges in my nails, gone. My sleep, so much better. And my stomach just feels happy. You know that dreaded afternoon crash that has you reaching for more coffee or sugary snacks? Well, that's not happening for me anymore. When your body is actually nourished, it runs so much better. I've tried other greens powders before, but Field of Greens is genuinely different. The quality is next level and you can taste it. It's become my go-to, especially on those days when my eating isn't exactly Instagram worthy, because we all have those days, right? And here's the thing. They are so confident that you'll love it too, that they offer a 100% money-back guarantee. That's how much they believe in their product. So I got you 15% off your first order and free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code MINDLOVE. That's promo code MINDLOVE at fieldofgreens.com. fieldofgreens.com. I don't know why it took me so long to invest in good bedding. I resisted it for years, but something flipped in me about 3 years ago. And now I'm basically a pillow connoisseur. I've tried them all, and I get weirdly excited about good bedding. Because here's the thing, we spend a third of our lives in bed, and the quality of that time affects literally everything else, which is why I'm so excited to tell you about my latest obsession, Lagoon Sleep Pillows. What sets them apart is their matching system. You take a quick 2-minute quiz about your sleep style and your preferences, and then they match you with your perfect pillow. I was matched with their Otter pillow, and I am so impressed. Lately, I've just needed more support, and this seems to cradle me in all the right places. I'm also low-key obsessed with their travel pillow, which I use for way more than just travel. I actually hug it, use it as leg support, and of course, take it on trips with me. Well, the secret is in their adjustable fill. You can add or remove it to get that perfect alignment for your spine. A study even found that the right supportive pillow can improve sleep quality by 63%. And Lagoon lets you try their matched pillow for 100 nights risk-free. Free returns, no questions asked. Falling asleep has never been easier. I toss and turn less and just wake up feeling refreshed every morning. Go to lagoonsleep.com and take their awesome 2-minute sleep quiz to find your match. Use the code MIND for 15% off your first purchase.
Absolutely. And I know that I would say so many things to that, but one, I would say this is that we want to go beyond expectation. And this is the reason why, is that if somebody even takes a placebo, the same fake pill, and they're told it's going to help their blood pressure, it can. Or if they're told it's going to reduce itching from illness or a rash, it can. So it's beyond expectation. There's a communication that is happening through the body, because if you think about it, one person can be told the same fake pill is going to do one thing and another person another thing. So let's say it's like, how do the cells get that message? Like, how did they get the specific information, if you will? So that's one piece that's important to look at, is the energy of the body. And kind of a way to think about the energy of the body is this, is that just like a light bulb emits particles of photons, light bulb, particles of light, photons, our bodies emit particles of light, which are biophotons. Now, what's amazing is that they were discovered 100 years ago by a medical scientist, but there's a database, even a current database, that's under the NASA agreement, that there are continued studies about the energy of the body that are in there. So the awareness, this energy, this light energy that goes through our body, researchers suggest that it communicates things like homeostasis, and all kinds of information through the body. Now, a lot of people might say, well, how does light communicate information through the body? But if we stop and think about it, our cell phones, text message, email, cable TV are all on fiber optics, which is light energy, light communication. And so we're doing this literally every day in our world. So I think that's an important piece. And not only that, but research has also shown that different illnesses emit different types of biophoton emissions. Like type 2 diabetes is different from cancer cells, is different from healthy cells. And so our bodies are actually emitting different biophotons from different illnesses. So, I mean, we basically, we could geek out on all that stuff. And that's exactly what I did. So I was like, okay, how does all of this work? But when I simplified it, what I looked at was this, is I said, okay, our minds, we know, how can I see that the mind affects the physical body? Emotions. If somebody's embarrassed, their face turns red. If somebody's panic attack, racing heart, shortness of breath. And then, of course, initially I thought I'm going to need a lot more than emotions to heal my body. I mean, I've had this accident, this injury. But then you start to look at how much can emotions affect the physical body. We can see things like broken heart syndrome, where somebody can die of a broken heart, or scared to death, where somebody can be so scared their heart just stops. And you really look at it and you think, wow, emotions really can have a major impact. And research even from Harvard suggests that autoimmune conditions can be caused by stress. So we can see all of the ways that emotions affect us. However, I think that one thing that also really helped me was this, is I began to look at it objectively and say, well, wait a second. There are also people who have PTSD, severe trauma, who aren't sick. And there are other people who are retired and maybe don't live that stressful of a life, who are. What's the difference? And what I started to realize was that it's the combination of emotions that's the key. And so the simple way to think about that is if somebody wants to make cake and you have flour, you can't make cake. But if you have flour and you mix it with eggs and butter, or vegan eggs and butter or whatnot, you have cake. And if you have different ingredients, you have a completely different recipe. And that's how I saw what was possible for somebody with multiple personality disorder to have one illness in one personality and a completely different pain or illness in a different personality. And so that's been the key. And so even fast forward to today, I mean, not only was I able to heal myself with that, but I've been able to show healing results under medical equipment, and just actually had studies published, some case studies published in a medical journal last year, because just doing that, just helping people to understand what are the specific emotional triggers, ingredients that are affecting their body, and changing those. And you can see pain go away, even under medical equipment. And it's incredible.
That is fascinating. I've never heard the combination of emotions explained that way. And that makes so much sense, because it's like a lot of us have pieces of this information. We have the idea that it's our beliefs or our emotions or the messages that we're told. And each of those individually has a lot of weaknesses to it. For example, I have known people who totally believe in the law of attraction, and I might accidentally say something like, oh, are you getting sick? They're like, don't tell me that I'm sick, because they think I'm going to make it worse. And I'm like, I'm really going to hope you're a little bit stronger. I'm sorry. I'm trying to toe the line of how do I protect myself while also not affirming something you don't want? I don't know. And so it gets murky. But when you really look at that holistic approach, I feel like it puts us back in our power.
It does. It does very, very much. And the amazing thing is that it's not it's kind of a simple way to think about it is, if we think about somebody with multiple personality disorder, they don't necessarily have to believe they're going to be sick in one personality and not another. In fact, as I was researching all this stuff, there was a woman who was blind in some personalities and not in others. So it's not just something that you think of. And it was confirmed on EEG, and the temperature changes. Even the body can change temperatures from one personality to another. But that was the key, and kind of to give an idea of a type of ingredient. In some cases, the ingredient needed for healing is even self-image. And what can happen is, if somebody has been sick for a long period of time, or they know of, or a parent has been sick and they see themselves as being like a parent, that can also be one of the ingredients. Or, of course, loneliness can be one of those ingredients. Now, is everybody who's lonely sick? No. But do we also know that loneliness increases illness? Yeah. I mean, the Surgeon General released an entire report on that last year, how people with experiencing loneliness have an increase in type 2 diabetes and heart disease and stroke, all of these different things. So we know, and that's exactly it. You said it well. We can see the pieces. And basically, what I was able to do was understand the pieces that are the puzzle and understand how it works, and then show people how to release those pieces. And that's been the key to getting incredible results. And that's been the key to healing.
Whose research influenced you the most when you were studying self-healing?
I would say research on multiple personality disorder. That was, I would say that. I would say also Florence Scovel Shinn. That was powerful. And Louise Hay, like the awareness, that made me look at the awareness that different emotions affect the body differently. Now, I'm not totally there. We have some differences in the work and whatnot, but that was powerful to me to really have me start looking at different emotions. And I would say multiple personality disorder, because I sat there and I thought, well, I need a personality that doesn't have pain and is healed. And that medical journals, I got tired of all of the advertisements, because I would read on some type of supplement and it was like, this is going to help you heal. This is going to help you do this. And I would get sucked in and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then I would try it and then it didn't work. And then I would, and so that's when I started thinking, okay, well, if there was a cure, then it would work. And then also just, I would say that, and then just understanding that the body's constantly repairing and replacing cells. So I would say a lot of medical journals. I just started geeking out on a lot of medical journals. And I would say even information on energy. Go ahead.
I feel like that is the most damaging part of false advertising. Is I know so many people who, I'm very holistic minded, and I'll talk to somebody who like kind of dabbled over there, but it's like they got a supplement from an Instagram ad, maybe even 12, and they didn't completely remove their anxiety. And so then they're just like, all of that's BS. And then when they take their amphetamine, they're like, well, I can feel that one. So it's like this moral obligation that if you're going to put something out there, at least explain, give the holistic, brainwash them too, so our minds start to work for us.
So the moral of the story is we should brainwash more people.
Brainwash ourselves. I was just sharing this with my clients. It's like, we understand the most powerful people in the world understand how to brainwash people. That is why the news is fear driven, because when we're in fear, we're easily controllable. And so if people can do that for manipulative purposes, then we can do that for ourselves, for our highest good. This is how I've overcome so many different things in my life, is I'm like, well, what are the keys to brainwashing? The only information I'm going to assume that I'm going to consume in the next 3 months is going to be how this is going to work for me. And then by the time I'm done with it, I'm like, well, there's no other option for me at this point. I see it, I feel it, I believe it, I'm doing the things. So that has been actually helpful, is understanding the brainwashing techniques. Don't worry, you guys, I'm not subconsciously brainwashing you out there, unless it's for your highest good.
I think she's brainwashing you into saying, hey, you're empowered. Hey, we're all powerful beings. We can think outside of the box. Don't get sucked in the fear. I think the brainwashing is good, actually.
Yeah, just take apart this audio and you'll find a subliminal track just at a specific frequency convincing you of your power.
Well, that says step into your power. Go ahead.
You mentioned that meditation can be beneficial in some cases, but for self-healing, it requires more than just meditating. Why is that, and what do you recommend?
Absolutely. So multiple things. And really, ultimately, one of the things that happened during my injuries, I had been meditating for like over 5 years in theta state, delta state, silent meditation, guided meditation. I was like, okay, if this meditation thing is going to work, I'm going to do every single version of it I can. And then I had this experience where basically a friend, she called me up, her aunt was dying, and she asked me if I wanted to say goodbye to her. And I said, yes, of course. And so I went over and she had been, somebody was doing all the positive thinking, the meditation, the affirmation, all the positive things. And she had also been like in this deep state of relaxation for, because she had been unfortunately in and out of hospice, but in and out of consciousness. And it really shook me. I said, I just have to do something different. And that what I did was I just started saying, okay, I have to really target the specific emotions. And that is key, is targeting the specific emotions. And there's a silly, like I'm telling you, ridiculously silly exercise that I could show you and demonstrate if you'd like, that would walk you through understanding it. Because a lot of people, they hear meditation. And again, while meditation could be nice, it's not typically enough. So I'm going to do like a silly, ridiculous, I'm warning you. It's really ridiculous. It is silly, but it's also really profound. And it's this. Okay, so I'm just going to ask everybody to just take a moment and close your eyes as long as you're not driving, and close your eyes. And I'm going to invite you to just for a moment to breathe and to picture what it would feel like to have somebody you love making you your favorite meal ever. Your favorite meal ever. And what that would feel like. What that would feel like to have somebody making you your favorite meal ever. What that would feel like. What it would feel like. All right. And I'm going to ask you to breathe, and you can go ahead and open your eyes and kind of just put that into the universe. That would be amazing and wonderful. And now I'm going to give you a completely different vision. Completely different vision. And I'm going to ask you to picture that you take a spoon and you take a big scoop of worms and you take it towards your mouth like you're going to eat it. And notice what feeling comes up. Now, delete. Okay. But notice again, this is profound. Give me 1 second. And it is this. Number one, a lot of people, if they went into it, would feel a sense of disgust, which is mind programming. It is not our innate programming because our ancestors used to eat worms. So it is not innate for us. It is programming. Number one. Number two, you could meditate for the next 20, 40, 50 years, and that programming would still be there. Okay. So number two is that. Number three is that if you go deep into it, you could feel like a gag, like, ew, just from an imagined vision that is in your mind where nothing actually even happened. And we can see how much our emotions, what's in our mindset, can impact us, even if it's not real. And so my point is, we could meditate, but that trigger isn't going to go away. And we have pictures and ways of thinking in our subconscious mind that are patterns that we go into all of the time that trigger us, whether it's hurt or rejection or upset or anger or whatever it is, that is a pattern that is triggering our health. And we don't realize that's happening. And we could meditate for years, but we're not necessarily going to rewire the programming. And we need to, like the way that I help people even get results where you can see it under medical equipment is I identify the specific patterning and I help them to change it. And then that's what creates a radical shift. Does that make sense? I warned you it was ridiculous exercise.
I ate worms this morning. I was prepared. I am wondering if meditation doesn't rewire that, what are the steps that you take to first identify some of those things that are creating those repeated patterns? And then what do you do to begin to rewire them so that your body's not just going in that same cycle for the rest of your life?
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
What do you do to begin to rewire them so that your body's not just going in that same cycle for the rest of your life?
Well, I would say, okay, so one thing is identifying what is a specific emotion. Now, that is key. Now, identifying the specific emotion is one. In my own case, it had to do with the events of 9/11, and I wouldn't have even known it had to do with September 11th. But ultimately, what I did is my nervous system. So I had a problem with my nervous system, CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome, which is like a neurological disorder. And so I just started asking the question, what is wrong with my nervous system? Why is my nervous system overreactive? Why is it acting up? Why is it, having, what is wrong? And so I started thinking about nervous system, fight, flight, nervous system. And so I really started exploring subconscious fears. And the more I started to realize and really delve into my subconscious mind and understanding those fears, I began to realize that the events of 9/11 had triggered a pattern in me that I didn't even realize was there. So I started to realize that. Now, I was not even in the events of 9/11. I worked in California, network engineering and operations, but my shift was 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific time. So I was on the phone with a colleague in the towers when the plane hit. And so, the colleague was yelling, "Help me." And so there was all of this stuff. And I would say that afterwards also, that at my desk, as I was working, trying to just help people during this time, the news was on replay all around me, because in telecommunications, we had to know current events. And so there was the footage playing over and over and over again. And then also there was, whether we're in terrorist red mode or orange, orange alert. And so it was like this feeling of expecting to die, and then also wanting to die to save others. And so there was all of this programming that was going on in my subconscious mind, and I didn't realize. And so that's what was a breakthrough for me. Now, I also had a pattern of a feeling of survivor's guilt. And so those multiple ingredients, I started putting the pieces together and understanding. So I looked for those multiple ingredients. So I would say there's a few things that we really need to know, is that we need to change the pattern. So even though this 9/11 piece was a trigger for me, this pattern of wanting to, quote unquote, die for others had actually started in my childhood. It meant you were a good person. And if you were guilty, it meant you were a good person. You had a conscience, which means you couldn't be a psychopath or some. So I had all of these things linked up. And so my point is, what you want to take from this is that our emotions breed more of the same. And we could call it law of attraction. We could call it repetition compulsion, reenactments, attachment theory, whatever we want to call it. If we're looking at psychology, we could look at revictimization. So we can look at all of these different ways. We could look at Freud's work, but very simply, we could also just look at and say people have patterns of anger or patterns of guilt or patterns of abandonment or rejection, whatever you want to call it. Or we could look at it and say, unfortunately, a woman may have an abusive father and leave him and find the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, et cetera, et cetera. So we could look at it in whatever way we can look at it and just see that patterns breed more of the same. And so what I would say is key is not just healing the trauma, but healing the pattern. Because even though the events from 9/11 affected me, there was a bigger pattern. So that wouldn't have healed me. I still had the pattern. It was a patterned way of thinking and feeling. And so I would say that. So identifying the specific, looking at the pattern, because the pattern creates an emotion, and then also looking at those specific ingredients is kind of the simple way to put it. So there's a lot, there's more to it, but there's this simple way. Go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking about how fascinating that is. Like, a lot of times I'll take in information and all these other little pieces of information start coming together. I remember a long time ago, I interviewed this man named Dr. John Leaf around how our cells communicate. And he shared his research in that went deeper than what most people believed, and how really our cells communicate. And you mentioned earlier, you're like, well, when you're taking this placebo and one person's told that it does this and another person's told that it does this, how do the cells get that information? And I was just reminded about how he talked about even just gazing at a tree creates healing. There's something about our cells communicating with that tree cells. And I'm not sure if this fits in there, but my brain was basically trying to wrap around all this. It's like, oh, where's the tree come into this?
Okay. So, technically speaking, interestingly, so the gentleman who discovered biophotons, technically he called it mitogenetic radiation, so energy of the body, but it was technically called the mitogenetic radiation. It got renamed biophotons, or it's also called ultra weak photon emission, whatever you want to call it, light energy from the body. When he discovered it, over the years, studies have actually found that this light energy, like when, let's say, for example, frog eggs, on one frog eggs onto another frog's eggs with this light energy, that research studies have shown that light energy can speed up healing. However, research has also shown that it can stop healing or even deform healing as well. So what's fascinating is that all three can have, like, each situation can happen. Now, the reason that's interesting is if you think about cell proliferation. So that's what cell proliferation is. And an easy way to picture cellular proliferation is to think about dish soap. If you pour water on dish soap, what happens? It proliferates, it bubbles over. And so that's what cell proliferation is, cells growing and dividing. So it can deform it, it can stop it, hinder it, it can speed it up. And our minds control that. We know that with if we ever seen somebody who goes through a stressful period of time and they look like they've aged, or they suddenly come out of that stress and they look youthful, we can see that our brains and our optimism have the ability to also speed up and slow down healing. But point being is that yes, that, like, well, I don't know about the tree, but any energy, when we look at energy, research studies have shown that energy from something can do all of those, can either speed it up, slow it down, stop it, hinder it, or deform growth, which is really kind of fascinating when we stop and think about it. But yeah, it's incredible. And when we think about the power of emotions, like so I mentioned there was some complexities, like there are some things that we want to know, and it's like this. A lot of times when people go to get rid of an emotional pattern or whatnot, so we know that emotions affect the body. If somebody's panic, they can have, anxiety, or, all of these different emotions can affect us. But part of the problem is to creating this change is we also need to understand that emotions can be miswired. So in other words, somebody can link up sympathy to love, in which case they need to hold on to sympathy because that's how they get love, or a pride in hardship, which means that people want to get rid of hardship. But then if it's linked to pride, then it's stuck also. So there's complications in working. The more that we understand how the mind works. So I'd say those are some of the complications. It's just simplifying it. And so I would say the way that I've been able to get results and show people how to get radical results, even people from RA or from POTS or autoimmune conditions, all kinds of things, is to just understand what is the specific combination of emotions, how do we shift those, and then rewiring the mind, understanding that the mind can be miswired, and it typically is. Like, I think every single person that I've ever worked with before, there's some type of miswired mindset. And so rewiring the mind, and in doing so, it helps shift a person's consciousness. So
one of the things you teach in your book is emotion controlled consciousness. Where does that play into all of this?
I love that you just asked that. Beautiful. And that's when I just said, shifting the consciousness, that's exactly it. Is that, all of the time we'll see, like, I was trying affirmations and trying to shift my mindset, but we want to think about radically feeling different, because when we rewire our mind, our emotions, we actually do shift our consciousness. And a simple way that we can see this is that if we imagine somebody who's really, 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 really in love, they're really in love, what do they see? They see all of the great things in that person. But if they're really pissed off at that person, what do they see? They see all of the negative things. They fault find. And it's like, if they try to think of something nice, they're like, well, so-and-so didn't screw up anything today, possibly. So it's like they're having a hard time, or maybe they see something good, but they don't really feel it. And so our emotions control how we feel. Our emotions control how we see, our consciousness, our perception. And we don't realize it. So if we have fearful mind programming, we see through a lens of fear, but we don't necessarily know that we're seeing that way. I mean, me personally, if you had told me I saw life through fear, I would have said, no way. And yet, when I released my subconscious programming, I realized that the world looked happier, like life looked safer. And I would have never thought that I was seeing through a lens of fear.
That makes so much sense.
But it was that brainwashing that you were talking about earlier from the news. Go ahead.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I had a similar realization with the idea of unworthiness. I remember when I first started self-healing, so many things kept coming back to worthiness. And I was like, I just don't relate. I liked my personality. I knew I had certain gifts. Like I did have that kind of support. I did feel good at things. And then when I really started to unravel the emotion behind so many of my behaviors, I was like, this is textbook unworthiness. But I could not see it for like 2 years of people saying that this behavior and this behavior were related to that. So I totally understand how deconstructing things in a certain way will highlight emotional programming that we didn't even know existed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even to add to that, a lot of times that's exactly what I'll tell people is I say, okay, if you imagine a woman who walks into a room and she's really, really, really upset, and you try to reason with her, let's go. Typically not so well, it doesn't go well. But if she calms down, how does it go? A lot better. And so that's exactly what I call is accessing resourceful consciousness, which is where the more we calm our minds and our subconscious programming and upset and whatnot, we access more of our genius. We can see with more clarity. Our minds are more resourceful. It's easier to see subconscious programming. And so all of those things are true. And that's part of the healing process that I always have people do is exactly that. It's saying, okay, look, the more that you actually just target specific things, the more that you can see with more clarity. Now, that's where I had been kind of using meditation in the wrong way, because what I had been doing is I was doing silent meditation where I was training my brain to ignore things. So a thought would come up, I would let it go. A thought would come up, I would ignore it. A thought would come up. So I was literally training my brain to ignore what was in my subconscious mind. So it made it harder for me. And so I was using meditation wrong. There are some positive meditations out there. I was doing it in a way that was not serving me. Or the other thing I was doing was what I now call mental vacation meditation, where I was just picturing myself like on a mental vacation. So I was really putting in a form of escapism in my brain instead of saying, okay, what is in my subconscious mind that I need to address? And then looking at the pattern and looking at the emotion, clearing my mind to be able to see with more clarity. So once I started facing my emotions and getting rid of them, I could see with even more clarity what I needed to do to heal. And that was pivotal. And then, I mean, after I healed, then I gained this ability to channel information. And I mean, everything changed. And that's when, I not only healed, but then developed this gift to be able to channel information and all of that. It's life-changing.
I wonder if that is why plant medicine has been so powerful for so many people in addressing long-lasting patterns, because whether you want to or not, it's going to face you with some of those demons that are there. You can't run from it in that experience. You've outlined the gift method as a structured approach to healing. Can you elaborate on what that method entails?
Absolutely. So the first step, so gift, GIFT, the G is get new healthy mind programming. And that's because the first thing we want to do is not delve into the negative. Everybody wants to go into the negative and say, what is the negative emotion that's affecting my body? But instead, we want to realize that more optimism, the more positivity that we can feel, the more it speeds up healing anyway. And so getting new healthy mind programming is the first one, uplifting the mind programming, then identify. So I has to do with identify. And that's where we start identifying the factors that are the problem, what are the emotional ingredients? I call them the 5 factors. And so that's step I. Step F has to do with freeing your mind. And so part of that has to do with release techniques. And the other part has to do with rewiring the mind, because the mind is holding on to something. So everything that we're trying to get rid of, we're actually holding on to. So like the pride and hardship or whatnot, or we'll have a trauma. We feel like holding on to it's keeping us safe. So no matter how hard we try to get rid of it, we can't, because we have some type of need to hold on to it. So instead, it's about reprogramming the mind and freeing ourselves from it. And then T has to do with stepping into the transformation, about saying, okay, embodying real change. So we're not just living in our head, but we're really embodying the transformation.
When someone is going through this process, how long does it typically take to begin to see some of that transformation? I know that's the hardest part for certain people, is that trust in the process. But you said you don't even necessarily have to fully believe what you're doing, which is helpful. You can swallow the bullshit on your own and it'll still work. But I know that people have a hard time trusting anything anymore. All those supplement ads we talked about, but also, we're such an immediate gratification society. We're rewired in a new way. So how do you set expectations for that? Or do you have to just let go of attachment? What comes up when I ask 7 questions at once?
Oh my God, I love you. 7 answers all at the same time. Yes, no, and maybe. I would say number 1 is that I've seen people who, like, even under medical equipment, where I've shown somebody how to release their own pain and they stayed in it. And it, like, even I have a video where I'm working with a woman who had neck pain for over a year, and I showed her how to release it. And that video was taken 8 years ago and her neck pain never came back. Okay. And so that quickly, but I would say this is that if you've ever tried to change somebody who doesn't want to change, we all know how that goes. And so what can happen is a person can find that part of them wants to change, part of them does not want to change. And it takes them a little bit longer. And so I would say it depends on each person. I mean, there's a woman that I worked with who was bedridden for 6 years, supine. Her body did not create enough blood. So even if she sat up, basically what would happen is her blood would go down and she would pass out. She would, her heart would start racing, and she could pass out. And so she was supine, and now she's running. She can run, she can travel, she can, like, all of her medical tests, her heart tests, everything all comes back great and 100% healthy. And for her, it took her 9 months to start walking. Now she was out of pain very quickly. So I think within the first session, she was out of pain, but she had different things and allergies and what. So every person, it really depends. I've had people go through my courses who, like, one person I'm thinking of went through, had RA, rheumatoid arthritis, was pain-free in about 2 weeks. And so it really depends on the person and the desire to want to change. And so, I mean, what I'm known for is I'll show people under medical equipment. I would say in the medical studies that I did with in the case studies in the medical journal, I would say the fastest person was 22 minutes under medical equipment. The longest person was 47 minutes under medical equipment. And you can see the difference, but all of them, I tell them, you have to follow through. And so that's the key. So it really depends on each person, because the one thing I'm going to say is it does take genuine change. And this is what we could look at as this is even in the Bible, it's written 3,000 years ago, a merry heart is a medicine to the body. Ill thoughts will dry the bones. And so it's even written in the Bible. It's just about understanding and really genuinely reprogramming at a deeper level. And so it's up to each person.
And I love how I know that most of my audience is probably right there with you. And then there's still those people that are teetering on the edge of skepticism. And so I love how you even have case studies published in a medical journal that you just mentioned. So I feel like people stop before they prove to themselves a new way of being, because that's what happens with cognitive dissonance. We are ingrained with these beliefs. And so when we get too close to something cracking that wide open, our instinct is to step back and protect ourselves or protect our current belief system. That's what we do naturally. And so if you're right there, do what you can. Like I said, brainwash yourself to another way of being, because I was just sharing with my coaching clients this morning how there's this whole other universe governed by different laws than we've been taught that's available to anybody who just has the courage to venture over there, to venture into a new way of thinking, feeling, believing. And so thank you for being such a pivotal part in that, especially in something as critical as physical healing. We are not the wellest society right now. And we have a lot of influences that are against us. And so to have this kind of information and to empower us to completely change our lives and our physical health is just so important. And so I love leaving people with an action item, something specific for them to do to ground these ideas into their reality. Because so often we fill ourselves with audiobooks, podcasts, and nobody does anything. So I want to make it easy, a first step to step into this, apply it to their own lives. If you're going to leave our listeners with something, what would that be?
It would be this. It would be, if you think about me, wheelchair, walker, cane, in extreme pain and absolute mess, and saying, okay, well, I have to retrain my emotions to feel happy and positive and really good. How am I going to do that? Because ultimately what a lot of people do is they say, well, I'm just going to think positive. Now, the problem with that is it's not really feeling positive. It's not going to amplify it to the level that we need to really get it in. And so for me to make that change, I would need to create a new positive neural pathway, which means I would need to access the positive emotions over and over again. And a simple way to think about that is like memorizing the alphabet. How did we memorize that? We get it in over and over and over and over and over until it becomes our new norm, except for in this case, I would need to access extremely high intense positive emotions over and over and over and over consistently for a period of time to be able to build a new neural pathway to then shift my consciousness, which in the state that I was in would have been absolutely impossible, except for the fact that I started hacking the process. And I thought about, okay, well, how do I do this? And what I would do is I picked just 2 songs. One was called Beautiful Day by U2. Another one was Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. And I would listen to these songs, not like, oh, I'm listening to music. Not at all. I would listen to them like, okay, I am going to amplify my giddiness as much as I possibly can, like an actual emotional exercise to make myself euphoric and just set everything else aside. Now, as soon as I say this, a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, a happy playlist. This is awesome. And that's not the case. So that's a completely different thing. And the way you'll want to think about it is like this. Is it, if somebody's taking if you think about a big open field of grass and you think about somebody taking the same path every day, every day, every day, every day, it creates a path in the grass. But if you take a bunch of different ways every single day, this way, and then this way, and then this way, and this way, you don't create a path. So the same is true with our brain. We needed to create a new neural pathway so it does it automatically. Or another way to think about it is if somebody's golfing and every day they hold the golf club a different way. They go, oh, it's going to be fun to do it this way. Oh, it's going to be this way. Oh, it's going to be great this way. You never create a neurological path, a path. So instead of listening to a happy playlist, which I did that too, but instead I picked just 2 songs and I listened to them over and over and over. And what was also helpful about this is I just made myself as ridiculously giddy as possible. It wasn't like just listening to music. It was purposely making myself fall in love with it, like an exercise, like lifting weights, except for this was like lifting excitement as much as I possibly could. Now, what was also helpful is that in doing so, it helps increase trigger positive biochemistry. So that can help also with healing of the body, because research has shown time and time again, if you have a euphoric and highly emotional experience while listening to music, it can trigger the release of dopamine or serotonin to help your body in positive ways. And even dopamine has been connected to speeding up healing and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I started doing. And then to be able to do that, it's kind of like compound interest, because when you get it in and you get it in over and over, at first, maybe the first couple of days, you might, notice, okay, well, that's great. I felt great, happy for 5 minutes. Okay, awesome. But when you start bringing it in over and over and over, it's like compound interest for your subconscious mind, where you just start feeling actually happier, and it gets in over and over. So that's what I did. And it really, that was one way to just hack the process to start bringing in even more positivity.
Ooh, I love that. That's something I'm always guiding people through, is amplifying emotion. And so to have this specific process tied to it, because music is so powerful. I also remember interviewing a hypnotist who also was trained in NLP, and he talked about specific ways to trigger yourself into focus. And you can have like a specific smell a specific sound, even the way like he had little triggers like putting your fingers together, squeezing your wrist or something like that. And if that works, then this power of emotion and music, I can just see how tangible that can be just in one session of that. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for all of your research in this really life-changing work. For listeners who are as interested as I am and want to connect with you and read your book, where's the best place for them to connect?
My book is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, so anywhere books are sold, or even on my website. What's really cool is that on it, there is a link that says See Live Healing, and you can actually see me working with somebody who's got neck pain under medical equipment, and you can see the transformation of their pain going away. So it's live. And so that's what's really great, is you can see it in action. And my website is brandygillmore.com.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/347. Your challenge for this week is to create your 2-song playlist. This is going to be your emotional happiness trigger playlist. And like she said, this isn't just a happy playlist. We all have those, and those are awesome as well. This is one where you're actually going to start training your brain like Pavlov's dogs. You know, they hear the bell and they already salivate without seeing the food. You want to do that same thing with these songs. 1 or 2 songs. Maybe choose something that already lights you up. Maybe choose something that has great lyrics. You get to choose. But every time you listen to this song, I want you to get into a headspace consciously and really feel into that. Feel if you can amplify that feeling in your heart space. Feel your aura expanding. And do this over and over and over again with the same songs, to where you can be doing something else and that song comes on and your energy and your emotional state is just fired up. I want to know what songs you choose. Please, please, please share this with me. Take a screenshot, share this on Instagram, put that Spotify link in there. I want to know which songs are making you happy, because I would love to create an entire playlist with some of these songs. So reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa and share what you've got. A few things to keep you up to date about. There is a new June Soul Strength activation that is getting ready to launch. You'll be hearing about it in my email list. If you're not signed up for the Morning Mind Love, text the word morning to 33777 or sign up on the homepage of mindlove.com. There's a lot of really fun announcements coming up. So Soul Strength Activation cohort number 2, I'm making some improvements already. It's going to be epic. So reach out to me if you want more information about that. You can reach out to me on Instagram or through my email. Just reply to one of the Morning Mind Loves. We also have the first ever Mind Love Retreat. I would love to do these yearly, but nothing's promised. This could be the only one. We're staying at the most epic mansion in Big Bear. It's going to be incredible. I have every detail planned to the T already, and I am pulling out all the stops for this one. Like, this is going to be luxury at its finest. So airport transportation will be arranged. All of your organic food will be prepared by the best chef up here in Big Bear. We've got the best West Coast cacao facilitator planned. It is really going to be so good. Sound bath, yoga, not to mention the property that it's going to be on. Imagine strolling with your cup of coffee on the grounds of this epic mansion. Ugh, I just can't wait. You can find out more information at mindlove.com/retreat. And all of my amazing sponsors are at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.